Today's story is about a guy who saved almost $18,000 for his wedding. Joint account, both contributing every month, deposits paid, vendors booked, 4 months to go. Then he checks the balance one night and 14 grand has vanished. Gone. His fiancée had been quietly draining the account for 2 straight months to fund her friend's business. A friend who has already crashed and burned through 6 businesses in 4 years. And when he confronts her about it, she hits him with, "I knew you'd say no." That sentence right there is the entire story. Buckle up because this guy's response was absolutely surgical. Let's get into it. My fiancé drained our wedding fund behind my back. So I returned the ring and moved on. So my name's Nate, I'm 30, I'm an electrician. Been doing it since I apprenticed right out of high school and I'm good at it. Licensed, bonded, the whole deal. I run jobs for a mid-sized company and I pull solid money. Not getting rich, but I've got 0 debt. A truck that's paid off. And I've been putting money away for the future like a responsible adult. That last part is going to be important later. My fiancée Brooke and I had been together 4 years. She's 28, works as a dental hygienist. Met her at a 4th of July cookout at my buddy Will's house. She was standing by the grill arguing with someone about whether hot dogs count as sandwiches, and I knew right then I needed to talk to this girl. We hit it off right away. She was funny, down to earth, had this energy that just made you want to be around her. We started dating that summer, and honestly, the first 3 years were the best of my life. She was the first person I ever dated where it didn't feel like work. We could sit on the couch for 4 hours watching terrible action movies, and it didn't feel like 4 hours. She'd quiz me on random stuff from her dental hygiene textbooks, just to see if I was paying attention. I wasn't, but I'd guess anyway, and she thought that was hilarious. We had a running argument about whether cereal is soup that lasted like 8 months. Dumb stuff. But it was our dumb stuff, and I loved every second of it. We moved in together after about a year and a half. Split everything down the middle, had our routines. Life was good. I'd come home from a job site covered in drywall dust, and she'd make fun of me for tracking footprints through the apartment. She'd come home smelling like fluoride and latex gloves, and I'd tell her she smelled like a hospital waiting room. We had a system for cooking. I'd handle anything on the grill or stove, and she'd handle anything that required actual measuring because apparently I eyeball seasoning like a maniac. Her words. Normal stuff. We were that boring, happy couple, and I was completely fine with it. About a year into living together, I proposed. Nothing crazy. Took her to the same park where we had our first real date, got down on one knee, and asked her. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. We set the date for October, gave ourselves about 14 months to plan everything, and opened a joint savings account specifically for the wedding. That was her idea, actually. She said she wanted us to build it together so it felt like our day, not just something we threw money at. I thought that was great. Really mature. We both agreed to put in $500 a month each. On top of that, my parents kicked in 3 grand as a gift, and Brooke's parents put in 2. So over the course of about a year, we'd built up a solid fund, almost $18,000 sitting in that account, earmarked for the venue, the catering, the photographer, the DJ, all of it. Everything was booked, deposits were down, the wedding was 4 months out, and we were on track. At least, that's what I thought. Now here's where I need to introduce someone. Brooke has this friend, Megan. They've known each other since high school, and Megan is one of those people who always has a new business idea every 6 months. First it was a candle company, then some kind of subscription box thing, then a juice bar, then an online clothing boutique. You get the picture. None of them ever went anywhere. Megan would get all hyped up, throw a bunch of money at it, realize running a business is actual work, and quietly let it die. Rinse and repeat. I never had a problem with Megan personally. She was nice enough. But I always noticed that every time Megan launched a new thing, Brooke would come home all fired up about it. She'd talk about how amazing the idea was, how this time it was really going to work, how Megan just needed the right support. The candle company lasted maybe 4 months before Megan's garage was full of unsold inventory. The subscription box never shipped a single package. I'd usually just nod and say cool because it wasn't my business. One time though, about a year ago, Megan asked Brooke to invest in the juice bar. Brooke actually came to me about it, which I respected. We talked it through, I said I didn't think it was smart, and Brooke agreed, told Megan no. The juice bar closed 3 months later. So Brooke knew the pattern. She'd seen it fail over and over. Even agreed with me that putting money into Megan's ideas was a bad move. And then she turned around and did exactly that behind my back. With 10 times the money. Hold on. This is me jumping in for a second. I need you to absorb what just happened here. This woman watched her friend fail at a candle company, a subscription box, a juice bar, and a clothing store. 4 businesses. 4 flameouts. She looked at her fiancé and agreed, out loud, that investing in Megan was a bad idea. And then she rated their wedding fund like it was a clearance sale at Target. That's not optimism, that's amnesia. Megan's business track record looks like a horror movie franchise. Everyone knows it's going to end badly, but somehow there's always a sequel. Anyway, it gets worse. So, about 3 months ago, I was doing our monthly budget review. Yeah, I'm one of those guys who actually sits down and looks at the numbers. I'd been busy with work and gotten behind on checking the wedding account. Figured it was fine since we had auto pay set up. But when I logged in that night, something was off. The balance was wrong. Way wrong. Instead of roughly $18,000, I was looking at just under $4,000. I sat there staring at my laptop thinking I was on the wrong account. Refreshed the page twice. Same number. My hands were kind of shaky when I started going through the transactions. Over the last 2 months, there'd been a series of withdrawals. Not one big chunk. Small amounts spread out over weeks. 800 here, 600 there, 1,200 on a Tuesday, 500 on a Friday, 13 separate transactions. All from the same person, Brooke. She'd pulled almost $14,000 out of our wedding fund. I felt sick. Like physically sick. My ears were ringing and my mouth went dry. $14,000. That's not a rounding error. That's not an accidental overdraft. Someone had to log in, enter the amount, confirm the transfer, and do it again 13 times over 8 weeks. That's not a mistake. That's a plan. My first thought was that something was wrong. Maybe a medical emergency I didn't know about. Maybe she owed somebody money. My mind went to dark places because honestly, the alternative, that she just gave it away willingly, seemed too insane. So instead of losing it, I took a breath and decided to ask her calmly. Maybe there was an explanation. That night she came home acting completely normal, humming some song, telling me about a kid who cried during a cleaning, regular Tuesday stuff. I waited till we were on the couch and just said it. Hey, I was looking at the wedding account today and the balance is way lower than it should be. Do you know what happened? The look on her face told me everything before she opened her mouth. That split second of panic people get when they've been caught. She recovered fast though, played it off confused and said, "What do you mean? How much lower?" I told her the number. Her face went white for about 2 seconds, and then she put on this calm expression like she was about to explain something perfectly reasonable. She gave the money to Megan. Not lent, gave. She said Megan came to her 2 months ago with her latest idea, some kind of wellness retreat center or day spa. I honestly stopped processing the specifics because my brain was stuck on the part where my fiancé secretly moved $14,000 of our wedding money into her friend's newest doomed project without saying a word to me. Brooke started explaining how Megan's plan was really solid this time, how she'd done research, how they'd already signed a lease on a space. She kept saying it's an investment, babe. We're going to get it all back and then some. Like she was pitching me on Shark Tank instead of confessing she'd raided our wedding fund. I asked one question. Why didn't you tell me? She got quiet and then said, because I knew you'd say no. And there it was. She knew I'd say no. Meaning she knew it was wrong. She knew I wouldn't agree. So instead of having a conversation with the person she was supposed to marry in 4 months, she went behind my back and hoped I wouldn't notice until it was too late. I asked her how exactly $14,000 was going to magically reappear in 4 months. The caterer needed final payment in 6 weeks. The photographer's balance was due in 8. She started talking about projected revenue and opening timelines, and I realized she was repeating Megan's sales pitch to me word for word. She didn't have her own answer because there wasn't one. The money was gone. I told her I needed to think and went for a drive. Sat in my truck in a parking lot for about 2 hours processing everything. Not just the money, the lie, the secrecy. The fact that she looked me in the eye every single day for 2 months, knowing what she'd done. We'd sat at our kitchen table going over seating charts and menu options while she knew the account was draining. I remembered one night specifically where we were on the couch looking at table centerpiece options on her phone, and she turned to me and said, "I'm so excited to marry you." That was maybe 3 weeks into the withdrawals. 3 weeks into secretly gutting our future, and she's telling me she can't wait to build one with me. There's this thing that happens when someone you trust completely just shatters it. It's not like getting punched. It's more like finding out the floor you've been standing on was hollow the whole time. Everything looks the same, but nothing feels solid anymore. Every memory gets a question mark next to it. Was she lying then too? Was that real? What else don't I know? I sat in that parking lot watching people go in and out of a Walgreens for 2 hours, replaying every conversation we'd had in the last 2 months. She let me plan a wedding she knew we could no longer afford. That's what got me. Not just the theft, the performance. Pause for a second. For those listening, this is me, not the OP. I need you to understand the level of acting this required. 60 days. She sat across from this man for 60 straight days, discussing napkin colors and centerpieces while knowing she'd gutted the account. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a full season of a show she was producing, directing, and starring in. Give this woman an Emmy because she kept a straight face through 8 weeks of wedding planning for an event she'd already financially destroyed. Brooke wasn't making a mistake. She was running a cover-up. And she only stopped because she got caught, not because she felt bad. Okay, back to it. When I got home, she was on the couch looking like she'd been crying. She hit me with the apologies right away. "I'm so sorry, I should have told you. I got caught up in Megan's excitement." The classics. But apologies only mean something when the person saying them actually understands what they did. And Brooke didn't. Because the very next thing she said was, "But the money will come back." Megan promised. Megan promised. The woman who's had 6 failed businesses in 4 years promised. Oh, well, that changes everything. I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. I just said, "I think we need to put the wedding on hold." She started crying harder, saying, "No, we can figure this out. We'll find the money somewhere else." And that told me everything. She wasn't upset about what she'd done. She was upset about the consequences. There's a big difference. Next morning, I called every vendor and canceled everything. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the DJ, the florist, every single one. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and a list, and just went down it one by one. Some of those calls were brutal. The venue coordinator sounded genuinely sad. She said she'd worked with a lot of couples, and could tell we were really excited about the day. I thanked her and said things change. The photographer tried to talk me out of it, saying couples hit rough patches before weddings all the time, and end up being the strongest ones. I appreciated the thought, but motivational speeches don't put $14,000 back in your account. The florist was the easiest one, weirdly. She just said, "Okay, hun, I'm sorry to hear that," and hung up. No pitch, no guilt trip, just professionalism. I respected that more than I expected to. Some deposits were non-refundable, so we lost about $3,000 on top of what Brooke had already given away. Nearly $17,000 gone between Megan's fantasy business and deposits we'd never see again. I made a spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm that guy. Tracked every dollar lost, categorized by whose contribution it came from, what it went toward, and whether any of it was recoverable. The answer to that last column was mostly no. I didn't tell Brooke I was doing any of this. Maybe that was cold. But she didn't tell me when she was draining our account either, so I figured we were even on communication. That evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a folder. I'd printed every bank statement showing every withdrawal, highlighted each one in yellow. 13 transactions. Each one a choice she made without me. I laid it out plain. Weddings canceled. All of it. Every vendor, every booking, every plan. Done. I told her I'd contacted the bank about separating our finances, and that I wanted my portion of the remaining money in my personal account by end of week. I'd calculated exactly how much was my contributions versus hers, including the $3,000 from my parents. I wanted every dollar that was mine. And then I took the ring back. I didn't plan for that to be the moment that cracked everything open, but it was. When I said I need the ring back, she just stared at me. Her hand went to her left ring finger like she was protecting it. That ring represented a promise. A future. And she'd already cashed that future in at a strip mall day spa that didn't even have drywall up yet. She whispered, "You're breaking up with me." And I said, "No, Brooke. You broke us up 2 months ago when you decided our future was worth less than Megan's spa." She slowly pulled the ring off and set it on the table next to the highlighted bank statements. I picked it up and put it in my pocket. That small metal circle felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried on a job site. She lost it. Full breakdown. Saying she'd do anything to fix it. She'd get the money back from Megan. She'd pay back every cent. I told her this wasn't about money anymore. I could make more money. What I couldn't get back was trust. The fact that she went behind my back on something this big told me everything about how she'd handle disagreements for the rest of our lives. If she can't come to me with hard conversations now, she never will. She begged me to sleep on it. I told her I'd been sleeping on it for 2 days, and my answer wasn't changing. Grabbed a bag I'd already packed and went to Will's place. And that's when the circus started. Okay, time out. Can we talk about the folder for a second? 13 transactions, highlighted in yellow, printed and organized on the kitchen table like a quarterly earnings report. Most guys would have had a screaming match in the living room. This man showed up with a presentation. That's not a breakup. That's a board meeting where somebody's getting fired. He went full Michael Corleone. Calm voice, devastating facts, and by the time she realized what was happening, it was already over. I love this man. Now here comes the part where everybody and their mother has an opinion. Within 24 hours, Brooke had told her version to everyone, and her version was creative. According to mutual friends, she said I called off the wedding over a small financial disagreement. Small. $14,000. Gone without permission. Small. First call came from her sister Kara. We'd always been cool, so I picked up. She started off checking if I was okay, which I appreciated. But then she pivoted into how Brooke was devastated, and maybe I was being too harsh. I asked if Brooke had told her what actually happened. Kara said yeah, there was a disagreement about money and some bad decisions. I laughed out loud. Kara, she took $14,000 from our wedding fund without telling me and gave it to Megan for a business that doesn't even exist yet. We can't pay a single vendor. There was silence. Then Kara said 14,000? I said yeah. More silence. Then she goes, I didn't know it was that much. Of course she didn't, because Brooke hadn't told her the real number. I gave Kara the full story, every withdrawal, the timeline, the I knew you'd say no confession. She was quiet for a long time and then just said, wow. She texted me later that night saying she'd talked to Brooke and that Brooke had left out a lot. Told me I was right to be upset. Appreciated that. But Kara wasn't the last. 2 days later, Brooke's mom, Linda, called. Linda had always liked me, treated me like a son. She'd text me recipes, always asked about my work, remembered my mom's birthday. So this was harder. She started by saying how heartbroken Brooke was, how the family was devastated, how they'd already bought plane tickets for out-of-state relatives, that the dress was hanging in Brooke's closet and she couldn't look at it. I told her I was sorry, genuinely. I liked Brooke's family. I'd imagined Linda as my mother-in-law for years, pictured holidays at their house, Sunday dinners. Losing that future hurt too. But then Linda starts with the guilt. Brooke's been crying nonstop. She's barely eating, can't sleep. And then the line that got me, she said, Nate, you know how Brooke is. She has a big heart. She just wanted to help her friend and it got out of hand. Can't you see past this one mistake? I said, Linda, she secretly took $14,000 over 2 months and hid it from me. That's not a big heart. That's a betrayal of trust. If she wanted to help Megan, she could have talked to me. She chose not to because she knew I'd say no. That means she knew it was wrong and did it anyway. Linda tried the "but you two were so happy" angle. I told her that's exactly why it hurts. We left it there. Then came Megan. She sent me this long text that was half apology, half sales pitch. Started by saying sorry things got messy between me and Brooke. Messy. Interesting word for someone who took 14 grand meant for a wedding. Then she pivoted into how the business was coming together and that Brooke's investment was going to pay off. She even sent a photo of the space, an empty warehouse with bad lighting. She actually said you should come see the space. I think once you see what we're building, you'll understand why Brooke believed in it. I stared at that text for a solid minute, trying to decide if this woman was delusional or just had no shame. Went with both. I replied with one line, Megan, you need to figure out paying Brooke back because that money wasn't hers to give. Didn't hear from her again. About a week later, my buddy Adam, who works in commercial real estate, messaged me. He'd heard through some connection that Megan's space had already fallen through. Landlord pulled the lease because she missed the second month's payment. Space was being relisted. So the wedding money was gone and the business it funded was dead before it opened a single door. 6 failed businesses, and Brooke thought number 7 was the one worth betting our future on. I forwarded the listing to Brooke with no comment. She read it and didn't respond for 3 hours. Then she sent back, "I'll get the money back." I didn't reply. Wait. Let me do the math here real quick because the numbers are hilarious in the worst possible way. Brooke invested $14,000 into a wellness spa. The spa missed rent after 1 month. The landlord said, "Get out." So the entire life cycle of this investment was, what, 6 weeks? Maybe 8? That's not a business. That's a Snapchat story. It existed briefly, nobody asked for it, and now it's gone forever. If Financial Disasters had a Yelp page, this one would have 0 stars and a review that just says, "Do not recommend." But we're not done yet because Brooke tries one more move, and honestly, I was not ready for it. Over the next couple weeks, I focused on getting my life sorted. Moved out on a Saturday. Will showed up with coffee and a dolly and didn't ask any stupid questions. Just helped me load boxes. His girlfriend sent along a bag of breakfast sandwiches, which was one of the nicest things anyone did for me that whole month. When we were done, Will looked at the empty apartment and said, "That's a lot of space for one person." I said, "She'll figure it out." Moving my stuff out of that apartment was weird. Not emotionally devastating like you'd expect. More like this strange, hollow feeling. I kept finding little things that reminded me of how things used to be. A sticky note she'd left on the bathroom mirror months ago that said, "Have a good day, nerd," and a photo strip from one of those arcade booths we did on our 2nd anniversary. I left both. They weren't mine to take. The memories behind them were already ruined anyway. Got my own place closer to work. Small 1-bedroom, nothing fancy, but mine. First night I sat on the floor because I didn't have a couch yet and ate a turkey sandwich, and honestly, it was one of the most peaceful meals I'd had in months. No tension, no wondering what she was hiding, no running numbers on an account that should have been straightforward. Just me and silence and bread. Actually, it was sourdough from that bakery on 5th, the one that always has a line out the door for no reason. Decent sandwich, though. Changed all my accounts, updated my address, new locks, new everything. The full restart. Set up my apartment piece by piece over the next few weeks. Got a couch off a buddy who was upgrading his. Found a solid kitchen table at a secondhand store for $40. It's not pretty, but it's sturdy and it's mine, and nobody's using it to plan a wedding that's secretly unfunded. Every day felt lighter, like clearing out a garage that's been packed for years. You don't realize how heavy it was until you start putting stuff on the curb. Will told me around this time that Brooke had been posting on social media stuff about heartbreak and fresh starts and how sometimes you don't realize what you have until it's gone. Vague enough that most people probably thought she was sharing motivational quotes, but I knew exactly what it was about. She also posted a photo of us from a trip we took last year with some caption about cherishing memories. Comments were full of people saying, "Stay strong, girl," and "everything happens for a reason." Not one of those people knew what actually happened. They just saw a sad girl posting sad quotes and assumed the guy must have done something wrong. That's always how it goes. Will also told me that a couple people from our friend group had confronted Brooke privately after hearing the full story. She apparently broke down and admitted everything. Said she got caught up in Megan's vision and made a terrible call. One friend told Will that Brooke said she kept meaning to tell me every day, but the longer she waited, the harder it got. She just hoped the money would come back before I noticed. That part made me more angry than anything because it meant every single day was a conscious decision to keep lying. It wasn't one bad moment. It was 60 bad moments stacked on top of each other. Brooke kept reaching out. Not aggressive, just a text every few days. "Sometimes I miss you. Sometimes can we please just talk?" Once it was, I got $1,200 back from Megan. Like that was supposed to impress me. $1,200 out of $14,000. At that rate, she'd have it all back in roughly 4.5 years. Great timeline. The one that almost got me was when she showed up at a job site. I was wrapping up a panel upgrade at a commercial building downtown and came out to my truck and she was just standing there, leaning against her car in the parking lot. She looked tired. hair pulled back in a way she never used to leave the house with, wearing one of my old flannels she'd kept. And for a second I felt that pull. That instinct to go over and hug her and say we'll figure it out. 4 years doesn't just disappear. Your body remembers the good stuff even when your brain is telling you to walk. But then I remembered the bank statements. The 2 months of lies. The way she sat across from me talking about napkin colors while the account drained. The way she said I knew you'd say no, like that justified everything. And that pull went away real quick. She asked if we could get dinner and talk. I told her there wasn't anything left to cover. She said she was going to get all the money back. I told her good, she should, but it wouldn't change anything between us. She asked why not. I said because money can be replaced, but trust can't. She teared up and said, "You're really going to throw away 4 years over this?" I said, "I'm not the one who threw it away, Brooke." "You did. You just didn't realize it at the time." She stood there looking at me like she was waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she got in her car and drove off. Haven't seen her in person since. Final update. It's been a few weeks now. I'm picking up extra jobs and stacking my savings back up. Already got a decent chunk rebuilt from overtime and a side project rewiring a buddy's detached garage. He paid me in cash and a really nice cooler, which honestly I needed more than the cash. Bought a grill for my patio and grilled steaks on a Wednesday for absolutely no reason other than I wanted to. Signed up for a flag football league with some guys from work. First game I pulled a hamstring on the second play and had to sit out for 20 minutes eating orange slices on the sideline like a 12-year-old. But it was the most fun I'd had in a long time. We lost 28-14. I didn't care even a little bit. Will's girlfriend asked me recently if I was doing okay. Not in that careful tiptoeing way people do when they think you're fragile. Just a straight-up honest question. I told her yeah. And I meant it. I was sleeping better than I had in months. No more lying awake, running numbers. No more checking the account at 2 a.m. because something felt off. She said something I've been thinking about since. She said, "You know what's weird is you don't seem angry. You just seem done." And she was right. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns hot and fades fast. What I had was clarity. The kind you get when the fog lifts and you can finally see the road you're actually standing on instead of the one you imagined. Ran into Brooke's sister Kara at a grocery store last weekend. She gave me a hug and said she was sorry about everything. Then she told me Brooke and Megan had a massive falling out. Megan could only pay back about $3,000 total. The rest was gone. Burned on the lease deposit, unfinished renovations, supplies rotting in a storage unit. $14,000, and all Brooke had to show for it was $3,000 and a dead friendship. Kara said she talks about you all the time, says you were the best thing that ever happened to her. I appreciated hearing that. But if I was really the best thing that ever happened to her, she wouldn't have treated me like a backup funding source for her friend's project. You don't secretly take from the best thing that ever happened to you. You don't lie to them for 60 straight days. You don't sit across from them every night knowing you're taking apart the future they're excited about building. That's not how you treat the best thing. That's how you treat something you take for granted. And people don't realize they've been taking something for granted until it's gone. Brooke texted me last week, said she finally got the full picture of how much Megan lost and that she was devastated. Said she wished she could go back and do everything differently. I read it, put my phone down, and went back to wiring a panel. My bank account is mine again. My life is mine again. And for the first time in months, I'm not checking a joint account wondering if the numbers are going to make sense. They always make sense now. Because I'm the only one making decisions. Some people learn lessons the hard way. I just wish her lesson didn't come at the cost of everything we were building. But that was her choice, not mine. I still wonder sometimes what Megan's actually doing with that storage unit full of spa supplies. Like, is she just paying rent on a unit full of massage tables and essential oils every month? That's got to be a weird line item on her budget. Anyway, so Reddit, would you have handled it differently? Could you have looked past something like this? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say this guy handled everything perfectly, but when someone drains $14,000 behind your back and their defense is, "I knew you'd say no," what are you supposed to do with that? That's not a red flag. That's a neon sign that says, I will make major life decisions without you whenever I feel like it. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He printed the receipts and quietly rebuilt his life. That's not cold. That's a guy who knows his worth. Drop your thoughts below. What would you have done? And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button so you don't miss the next one.